The Earth was quiet now, too quiet. The skies that once buzzed with airplanes and satellites were empty, except for the occasional drones sent to monitor the ruins of cities. It had been 20 years since the attack, an event humanity called the Scourge. That day, a fleet of alien ships descended without warning, their weapons tearing through defenses like paper. Millions died in minutes. Billions more followed as the attackers stripped resources from the planet before vanishing into the stars. In the aftermath, nations didn't argue or fight over blame. There was no time for politics when survival was the only goal. Leaders came together under one banner, the United Earth Alliance. They vowed never to let such destruction happen again. Among them was Commander Daniel Hayes, a man whose face carried the weight of loss. His wife and daughter had been among the first casualties of the Scourge. Every night, he stared at their pictures on his desk, promising himself they wouldn't die in vain. Dr. Laura Bennett stood beside him in this mission, though her role was different. A scientist with sharp eyes and endless curiosity, she spent years developing technologies far beyond what anyone thought possible. Her team created engines capable of bending spacetime, allowing ships to travel faster than light. She also designed weapons so powerful they could crack open moons. But even with all her brilliance, she couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger loomed out there, something darker. For 2 decades, humanity prepared. Factories churned out warships by the thousands. Training camps forged soldiers hardened by discipline and purpose. When the day finally came, the fleet numbered 900,000 vessels. Each ship gleamed under the sun as it left orbit, its hull etched with symbols of unity. Some called it the largest armada ever assembled. Others simply called it hope. On board the flagship Eclipse Asterisk, Lieutenant Ryan Carter adjusted his seat in the cockpit. He was young, barely 30, but already known for his daring maneuvers during simulations. Today felt different, though. As he looked out at the endless sea of stars ahead, doubt crept into his mind. Was this really the right thing to do? Could vengeance bring back those who were lost? Commander Hayes walked onto the bridge, breaking Ryan's thoughts. The older man's voice boomed across the room. "Today marks the beginning of justice," he said. "We go not just to fight, but to ensure that no one, human or alien, suffers like we did." The crew nodded, some cheering while others stayed silent. Not everyone shared Hayes' conviction. For many, the mission wasn't about justice. It was about anger, pain, and fear. They wanted blood for blood. As the fleet moved deeper into space, life aboard the ships settled into a rhythm. Soldiers trained. Engineers checked systems. Scientists monitored data streams for any sign of the enemy. Days turned into weeks, then months. The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly around them, making the journey feel almost dreamlike. But dreams can turn into nightmares. One evening, as most of the crew slept, Ryan noticed something strange on his console. A faint signal pulsed from a nearby star system, a signal that didn't match anything human or Xylon. Curious, he reported it to Commander Hayes, who ordered the fleet to investigate. What they found would change everything. The fleet approached the source cautiously. On the main view screen, the image of a dead world appeared. Craters scarred its surface, and broken towers jutted out like skeletons. This wasn't the enemy's home. It was a graveyard, left behind by whoever, or whatever, had destroyed it. Dr. Bennett studied the ruins closely, her expression growing grim. "This wasn't done by the Tylons," she whispered. "Something else is out there." And with that, the mission took an unexpected turn. Months passed as the fleet drifted through the endless void of space. The initial excitement of the mission had faded, replaced by a quiet rhythm of daily routines. Soldiers trained in zero gravity, their boots clicking against metal floors as they practiced combat drills. Engineers worked tirelessly to keep the ships running smoothly, fixing glitches and replacing worn-out parts. Scientists like Dr. Laura Bennett spent hours studying star maps and scanning for any signs of the enemy. But the deeper they traveled into uncharted space, the quieter everything became. Lieutenant Ryan Carter grew restless. He wasn't used to sitting still. Back on Earth, he'd been known for his quick reflexes and bold decisions, qualities that made him an excellent pilot. Now, all he did was stare at screens, waiting for something to happen. Most nights, he sat alone in the cockpit of his fighter, gazing out at the stars. They were beautiful, but they also felt cold and distant, like they didn't care about the fragile lives aboard the fleet. One evening, as the rest of the crew slept, Ryan noticed something unusual on his long-range scanner. A faint signal blinked on the edge of the screen, coming from a nearby star system. At first, he thought it might be a glitch or a stray piece of debris. But when he zoomed in, the signal grew stronger. It wasn't random. It pulsed in a pattern, almost like a message. Ryan hesitated for a moment before reporting it to Commander Hayes. The commander, always cautious, ordered the fleet to change course and investigate. As they approached the source, the tension aboard the ships grew. Soldiers checked their weapons. Scientists monitored every detail. No one knew what to expect. Was this a trap set by the Tylons, or something else entirely? When they arrived, the sight left everyone speechless. The signal came from a dead world, a planet covered in ruins. Towering structures, now crumbling and overgrown with strange alien plants, stretched across the landscape. Craters pockmarked the surface, evidence of some ancient catastrophe. It looked like a graveyard, frozen in time. Dr. Bennett led a small team down to the surface to explore. She moved carefully, her boots crunching against the brittle ground. Every step revealed more clues about the civilization that had once thrived here. Strange symbols were carved into walls, glowing faintly even after centuries. Machines lay scattered everywhere, their purposes unknown. It was clear this place had been advanced, perhaps even more so than Earth, but something had wiped it out completely. As the team dug deeper, they found records stored in crystals. Using portable scanners, Dr. Bennett translated fragments of the data. What she discovered chilled her to the bone. This civilization hadn't fallen to war or natural disasters. It had been destroyed by an outside force, a powerful entity that consumed everything in its path. The records called it the Harbinger, though no one could say what it truly was. When Dr. Bennett returned to the fleet, she shared her findings with Commander Hayes and the senior officers. The room fell silent as she explained the implications. If the Tylons were responsible for attacking Earth, then who or what had destroyed this world? Could the Cylons themselves be victims of the same force? Colonel Matthew Stone, a gruff and battle-hardened officer, dismissed the idea. "It doesn't matter," he growled. "We're here to destroy the Tylons. That's our mission. Let's stick to the plan." But others weren't so sure. Captain Emily Dawson, a calm and thoughtful diplomat, raised her hand. "What if we're wrong?" she asked. "What if the Tylons aren't our real enemy?" The debate raged late into the night, dividing the crew. Some, like Colonel Stone, wanted to push forward and attack the Tylons immediately. Others, including Dr. Bennett and Captain Dawson, argued for caution. The discovery of the ruined planet had shaken their confidence. For the first time, doubts crept into their minds. Were they heading into a fight they didn't fully understand? As the fleet prepared to leave the dead world behind, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He glanced at the stars outside his cockpit window, wondering what secrets they hid. Whatever waited for them at the end of their journey, one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. After leaving the ruined planet, the fleet continued its journey toward the Cylon homeworld. The mood aboard the ships was tense. Soldiers sharpened their weapons and reviewed battle plans, while scientists double-checked every system to ensure nothing would fail during the fight. Everyone knew the moment they had been preparing for was close, but no one could have predicted what happened next. As the fleet approached the Cylon system, alarms blared across the bridge of the flagship Eclipse *. A single alien ship emerged from the shadows of a nearby asteroid field. It was sleek and insect-like, with glowing panels that pulsed in rhythmic patterns. Unlike the aggressive warships humanity had faced before, this vessel seemed calm, almost peaceful. Commander Hayes ordered the fleet to hold position. "Let's see what they want," he said, his voice steady but cautious. Captain Emily Dawson stepped forward. As the fleet's top diplomat, it was her job to handle situations like this. She activated the communication system and waited for a response. The screen flickered to life, revealing a strange figure. The Cylon emissary looked nothing like the monsters humanity had imagined. Its body was covered in a smooth iridescent shell that shimmered like oil on water. Thin limbs moved gracefully as it spoke in a series of clicks and hums. A translation program quickly converted the sounds into English. "We mean you no harm," the creature began. "We are aware of your arrival and wish to speak." The words stunned everyone on the bridge. For years, humanity had painted the Cylons as ruthless killers who attacked without reason. Now, here was one of them, speaking calmly and offering dialogue. Some officers, like Colonel Stone, scowled at the screen, unwilling to trust the alien. Others leaned closer, eager to hear more. Captain Dawson took charge of the conversation. "Why did you attack Earth?" she asked, her tone firm but respectful. The Cylon hesitated, as if choosing its words carefully. "We did not attack your world," it replied. "Your people misunderstand. We are survivors, just like you." Dawson frowned. "Then who destroyed Earth? Who killed billions of our people?" The emissary's glowing eyes dimmed slightly, a sign of sadness or regret. "It was not us. It was something else, a force we call the Harbinger. It consumes civilizations, leaving only ruin behind. Our empire was vast once, but now we are shadows of what we were. When your signal reached us, we feared you were part of it." Dr. Bennett listened closely, her mind racing. The description matched what they had found on the dead planet. Could the Cylons be telling the truth? She exchanged a glance with Commander Hayes, who looked equally unsure. Colonel Stone slammed his fist on the table. "This is nonsense," he barked. "They're lying to save themselves. We should destroy them now while we have the chance." But Captain Dawson shook her head. "If they're lying, why send only one ship? Why not attack us outright?" She turned back to the screen. "Tell us more about this Harbinger." The Cylon explained that the Harbinger was ancient, older than any known civilization. It moved through the galaxy, feeding on energy and life. Wherever it went, planets turned to ash, and stars dimmed. The Cylons had tried to fight it centuries ago, but failed. Since then, they had been fleeing, hoping to outrun their doom. Lieutenant Ryan Carter watched the exchange silently. He didn't trust the Cylon completely, but its story made sense in a way that scared him. If the enemy wasn't the Cylons, then who, or what, were they really up against? Commander Hayes finally broke the silence. "We need time to think about this," he told the emissary. "But know this, if you're lying, there will be consequences." The Cylon nodded slowly. "Understood. We await your decision." With that, the transmission ended, leaving the humans to grapple with the shocking truth. For hours, the crew debated what to do next. Some argued that the Cylons were manipulating them, while others believed their story. One thing was clear: the mission had changed. Humanity wasn't just fighting for revenge anymore. They might be fighting for survival against something far greater. The debate raged on for days. The crew of the Eclipse was split and tensions ran high. Colonel Matthew Stone stood firm in his belief that the Cylons were lying. "They're trying to trick us," he growled during one heated meeting. "This Harbinger story is just a distraction. We came here to destroy them, and that's exactly what we should do." On the other side, Captain Emily Dawson argued for patience. "If they wanted to attack, they could have done it already," she said. "Why send one ship if they're planning to fight? Doesn't that seem strange to you?" Dr. Laura Bennett added her voice to the discussion. "Think about it," she said. What we saw on that ruined planet matches their story. If the Tylons are telling the truth, then there's something much bigger out there. A threat that could destroy us all. Commander Daniel Hayes listened carefully to both sides but struggled to make a decision. He had spent years preparing for this moment, dreaming of vengeance for Earth. But now, everything felt uncertain. Was it possible that humanity had been wrong about the Cylons all along? While the leaders argued, unrest spread among the soldiers. Some believed Colonel Stone's warnings and began whispering about mutiny. A group of officers, led by a fiery young captain named Marcus Hale, decided to take matters into their own hands. They secretly plotted to seize control of several warships and launch an attack on the Cylon homeworld without waiting for orders. Lieutenant Ryan Carter overheard their plan one night while walking through the corridors. At first, he considered joining them. After all, he had signed up for this mission to fight, not to sit around debating theories. But something stopped him. He thought about the Cylon emissary's words and the ruins of the dead planet. If the Tylons were telling the truth, attacking them would only make things worse. Instead of joining the mutiny, Ryan went to Commander Hayes. He knocked on the door of the commander's quarters late at night, his heart pounding. When Hayes opened the door, Ryan handed him a data chip. "You need to see this," he said quietly. Hayes plugged the chip into his console. On the screen appeared classified files, documents Ryan had uncovered while digging through old records. They revealed that Earth's leaders had known about the Harbinger long before the fleet left. Evidence suggested that the alien attack on Earth wasn't aimed at humanity at all. Instead, it might have been a desperate attempt by the Tylons to gather resources while fleeing from the Harbinger. The revelation hit Hayes like a punch to the gut. Humanity had waged war based on lies. All those years of hatred, all those lives lost. For what? He sat in silence, staring at the screen until dawn broke. When morning came, Hayes called an emergency meeting. He shared the files with the senior officers, including Colonel Stone and Captain Dawson. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the truth. For some, it was too much to accept. "This changes nothing," Stone shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "Even if they didn't attack us, they're still dangerous. We can't trust them." But others saw things differently. "If the Tylons are telling the truth, then we're facing something far worse than we imagined," Dawson said. "We can't fight the Harbinger alone. Maybe we should work with them." Hayes nodded slowly. "It's not an easy choice," he admitted. "But I think Captain Dawson is right. If we want to survive, we'll need allies. And right now, the Tylons might be our best chance." Not everyone agreed. The mutineers, led by Captain Hale, refused to stand down. They launched their stolen ships toward the Cylon homeworld, determined to carry out the original mission. Hayes ordered the rest of the fleet to intercept them, knowing that stopping the mutiny would cost lives and time they couldn't afford to waste. As the battle unfolded between human ships, the Tylons watched silently from afar. Their emissary sent a final message to Hayes. "Decide quickly. The Harbinger is closer than you think." The battle between the mutineers and the loyal fleet raged across the dark void of space. Captain Marcus Hale's stolen ships fired relentlessly, their weapons tearing through the shields of their former allies. Commander Hayes ordered his forces to hold back, unwilling to harm their own people. But the mutineers showed no such restraint. Explosions lit up the blackness as ships on both sides were destroyed. Lieutenant Ryan Carter piloted his fighter with skill, dodging blasts while trying to disable enemy vessels without causing too much damage. He knew this fight wasn't about winning. It was about stopping the mutiny before it cost more lives. "We're not here to kill each other," he shouted over the comms. "Stand down." But Hale's followers ignored him. To them, this was still a war against the Tylons, and anyone who stood in their way was an enemy. One of the mutineer ships broke formation and sped toward the Cylon homeworld, its engines blazing. It was clear they intended to strike first, no matter the consequences. On the bridge of the Eclipse Commander Hayes clenched his fists. "If they reach the Cylons, it'll ruin any chance of trust," he muttered. Turning to Captain Emily Dawson, he gave the order. "Disable that ship. Do whatever it takes." Dawson nodded and relayed the command. Moments later, a volley of precise shots crippled the rogue vessel, leaving it drifting in space. The mutiny began to falter as more ships were disabled or forced to surrender. Captain Hale's flagship remained defiant, but even he couldn't ignore the growing odds against him. Reluctantly, he signaled his surrender. With the mutiny quelled, Hayes turned his attention back to the Cylons. Their emissary had been watching the entire conflict unfold. Now, it sent another message. "You have made your choice. Will you stand with us?" Hayes hesitated only for a moment before replying. "Yes, we'll work together." The Cylons wasted no time. They shared coordinates leading to the Harbinger's last known location, a distant nebula shrouded in swirling clouds of gas and dust. As the joint fleet approached, the humans and Cylons prepared for what might be their final battle. Dr. Laura Bennett worked tirelessly alongside Cylon scientists, combining their technologies to strengthen the fleet's defenses. Every weapon, every shield, every piece of equipment was checked and rechecked. Then, it appeared. The Harbinger emerged from the heart of the nebula, a colossal being unlike anything the humans had ever seen. Its body shimmered with energy, shifting and pulsating like a living storm. Tentacle-like appendages lashed out, destroying nearby asteroids with ease. When it noticed the fleet, it unleashed a wave of destruction so powerful that dozens of ships were obliterated instantly. Panic spread through the fleet, but Commander Hayes kept his voice steady. "Hold your positions. Return fire." The combined forces launched everything they had: missiles, beams, torpedoes, but none of it seemed to affect the entity. It absorbed the attacks as if they were nothing. Dr. Bennett realized quickly that conventional weapons wouldn't work. She rushed to the bridge, her face pale but determined. "Commander, we need to try something else," she said. "The fusion reactors in our ships, they generate enough power to create a containment field. If we channel all our energy into one massive burst, we might be able to trap it." Hayes frowned. "What happens to the ships involved?" Bennett hesitated. "They'll overload. Anyone inside won't survive." Silence fell over the room. Everyone understood what this meant. Someone would have to sacrifice themselves to save the rest. Captain Dawson stepped forward without hesitation. "I'll lead the operation," she said firmly. Before anyone could argue, she added, "This is why I'm here, to protect others. Let me do my job." As Dawson prepared her team, Lieutenant Ryan Carter watched from his cockpit, feeling helpless. He wanted to volunteer, to join her, but he knew there was no room for sentiment. Instead, he focused on covering the ships involved in the plan, ensuring they reached their positions safely. When the time came, Dawson gave the signal. The designated ships formed a ring around the Harbinger, their reactors glowing brighter and brighter. Energy surged through the containment field, creating a blinding light that filled the void. The Harbinger thrashed violently, trying to break free, but the field held firm, for now. On board her ship, Dawson smiled faintly as she activated the final sequence. "For everyone left behind," she whispered. Then, with a deafening roar, the reactors overloaded, sealing the Harbinger inside the collapsing field. Silence followed. The surviving fleet stared at the spot where the entity had vanished, relief washing over them. They had won, but at a great cost. The silence after the battle was heavy, almost unbearable. The surviving ships floated in the void, their crews staring at the empty space where the Harbinger had been moments before. It was hard to believe it was finally over. For years, humanity and the Cylons had prepared for war, only to find themselves fighting a force far greater than either of them. And now, thanks to Captain Emily Dawson's sacrifice, that force was gone. On board the flagship Eclipse *, Commander Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge. His shoulders slumped with exhaustion. He hadn't slept in days, but he knew there was no time to rest. The fleet had suffered heavy losses, hundreds of ships destroyed, thousands of lives lost. Among them was Dawson, whose bravery had saved them all. Hayes clenched his fists as he thought about her final words. She had given everything to protect others, just as she promised. Lieutenant Ryan Carter sat alone in his cockpit, staring at the controls. His hands trembled slightly as he replayed the moment the containment field collapsed, sealing the Harbinger inside. He had watched Dawson's ship explode, taking her and her crew with it. It wasn't fair. She didn't deserve to die like that. But deep down, he knew she wouldn't have wanted it any other way. She had always believed in doing what was right, no matter the cost. Dr. Laura Bennett walked through the corridors of the Eclipse Asterisk, her mind racing. The battle might have ended, but there was still so much work to do. The surviving ships needed repairs, and the wounded required medical attention. Supplies were running low, and morale was even lower. But what weighed on her most was the realization that humanity still didn't fully understand the Harbinger. What was it? Where did it come from? Could it return? She decided to focus on the wreckage left behind. Fragments of the Harbinger's energy field still lingered in space, drifting like ghostly echoes. Using drones and probes, Bennett began collecting samples, hoping to learn more about the entity. Her team worked tirelessly, piecing together data and running simulations. Every discovery brought new questions, but Bennett refused to give up. Understanding the Harbinger might be the key to preventing another disaster. Meanwhile, tensions between the humans and the Tylons began to ease. Both sides mourned their losses and shared stories of those they had lost. Slowly, trust started to grow. Cylon engineers helped repair human ships, while human medics treated injured Cylon soldiers. Conversations that once felt forced became natural, even friendly. Lieutenant Carter found himself talking to a Xylon pilot named Frank, who had fought alongside the humans during the battle. They exchanged stories about their families and homes, finding common ground despite their differences. Commander Hayes called a meeting with the senior officers and Cylon leaders to discuss their next steps. "We've won," he said, his voice steady but tired. "But we're not done yet. We need to rebuild, not just our ships, but our worlds. And we need to do it together." The Cylon emissary nodded in agreement. "Your people and ours have suffered greatly. But perhaps this tragedy can lead to something better. A new beginning." Hayes looked around the room, seeing determination in the eyes of his crew and their newfound allies. For the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope. The mission had changed them all. They had started with vengeance in their hearts, but now they carried something else: understanding, cooperation, and maybe even friendship. As the fleet began its long journey back to Earth, Hayes made a promise to himself. He would honor Dawson's memory by ensuring that humanity never forgot the lessons they had learned. War wasn't always black and white. Sometimes, enemies could become allies, and sacrifices could pave the way for peace. In the distance, the stars shone brightly, guiding them home. The journey back to Earth was long and quiet. The fleet moved slowly, its ships battered and scarred from the battles they had fought. Supplies were stretched thin, and repairs continued around the clock. But despite the hardships, there was a sense of relief among the crew. They had faced the greatest threat imaginable, and survived. Commander Daniel Hayes spent most of his time on the bridge, watching as the stars outside the window blurred into streaks of light. He thought about everything that had happened. The loss of Captain Emily Dawson, the sacrifices made by so many, and the unexpected alliance with the Cylons. It wasn't the mission he had planned, but it was one that changed him forever. He no longer saw the universe as a place of enemies and allies. Instead, he saw it as a vast, complicated web where survival depended on working together. Lieutenant Ryan Carter found himself reflecting on the same things. He had joined the mission seeking adventure and glory, but what he found was something far deeper. He thought about the Cylon pilot Frank, who had become a friend during the journey home. They talked often, sharing stories and learning from each other. Ryan realized the fear of the unknown had driven humanity to make mistakes, to see enemies where there were none. Now, he hoped those days were over. Dr. Laura Bennett devoted herself to studying the fragments of the Harbinger's energy field. Her work consumed her, but she didn't mind. She believed understanding the entity could prevent future disasters. Late at night, she sat in her lab, surrounded by glowing screens and humming machines. Each discovery filled her with awe. The Harbinger wasn't just a weapon or a creature. It was something ancient, almost beyond comprehension. Though it terrified her, it also inspired her. There was so much left to learn about the universe, and she wanted to be part of uncovering its secrets. As the fleet approached Earth, the planet looked different from how they remembered it. The scars of the scourge were still visible. Craters marked the surface, and cities lay in ruins. But there were signs of life, too. Greenery had begun to reclaim the land, and small settlements dotted the landscape. Humanity was rebuilding, slowly but surely. When the ships landed, crowds gathered to welcome them home. Survivors cheered and cried, waving flags and banners. For many, the return of the fleet symbolized hope, a chance to start anew. Commander Hayes stepped off the Eclipse alongside Cylon leaders, signaling a new era of cooperation between their peoples. Speeches were given, promises made, and plans drawn up for a shared future. Hayes eventually stepped down from his position, passing leadership to younger officers like Ryan Carter, who embodied resilience and optimism. "It's your turn now," Hayes told him. "Take what we've learned and build something better." Dr. Bennett continued her research, setting up a joint human-Xylon science team dedicated to studying the Harbinger's remains. She believed the answers they sought could unlock technologies far beyond anything they had imagined. Her dream was to use this knowledge not for war, but for peace and exploration. Life on Earth began to change. Humans and Xylons worked side by side, sharing resources and ideas. Ruins were cleared, and new cities rose from the ashes. The scars of the past remained, but they served as reminders of how far they had come, and how much further they could go. In the end, the mission hadn't been about revenge or destruction. It had been about survival, unity, and hope. As Ryan looked up at the stars one night, he smiled. The universe was still vast and mysterious, but for the first time, it didn't feel so lonely. Together, they had faced the darkness and emerged stronger than ever.